Hello, and welcome back to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. It's Bailey, and I hope you're having a great Wednesday or whenever you're listening to this episode. I feel like we are in the swing of things. It is almost Christmas time. We celebrated Christmas this last Sunday, and I feel like, in all honesty, things are just picking up so quickly. I've got gifts I have not purchased, and I feel like I talked about that on last week's episode that I needed to get on that, and I still really haven't. But we had, like I had said, Christmas this last Sunday, so we're kind of getting in that holiday mood. I've been listening to Christmas music almost constantly, and I'm just so excited for this time of year. I feel like, especially now with it being Wednesday, you're probably, if you're in school, gone, home for break, or almost done if you're like in high school, whatever it is, or even if you're working. Like I know my husband will have that whole week off then before that New Year's Day. So then he goes back to work on the 2nd of January. So that's pretty nice too. I know not all people have that. I personally don't have that. I'm still taking calls and working with clients. I am giving myself, though, that Tuesday off, so the day after Christmas, and then working again on Wednesday through Friday, and then obviously we have the weekend. I just feel like it's so weird to have Christmas on a Monday, and I'm sure, that happens every 7 years, right? But I just do not remember a year when Christmas was on a Monday. I feel like in my mind, it should always be on like a Friday, like Christmas Eve on a Friday, and then you have like a cozy Saturday morning for Christmas. I don't know, in my mind that just makes sense. But I obviously, the 25th of the year is always when we celebrate. But I hope you are just feeling excited for that time of the year. I think I would hope that for most people it's an exciting time where they get to see family or friends, or maybe travel sometime during this break. But if you're one of those people where the holidays bring a lot of maybe sad or lonely feelings, I just want to let you know that I will be praying for you, thinking of you, because for my family, Christmas has always been such a joyful time. But I know, a lot of loss happens around this time of year. And I think that's part of why entering January always just makes me have like a gross feeling in my stomach, because you cannot anticipate what's happening in the next year. So many sad, terrible things could happen, or so many joy-filled things could happen. And it's just like, I think for me, December's always been very overwhelming. And I recently shared a post about that too. And I think mostly it's because I put a lot of pressure on myself to get a lot of things done in a year. I don't want to just, coast. And looking back at this last year, this was the first year I took my business full time, and I saw how much growth happened in 1 year. Now I just fear that I'm going to backtrack, and the growth is, and obviously it's not going to, but in your mind, I think there's always just those feelings of doubt. And that could be the same if you were in like a traditional job setting, right? You got promoted this year, but you just don't know about next year. You don't want to jinx it or just assume that something's going to happen. So it gets really hard not to just get overwhelmed and then worried or anxious about what's to come. But at the same time, I know that I go 100 miles per hour, which I think is also why this week just feels so overwhelming for me, is because this is kind of a catch up, but also, I don't know, I guess I just started talking today, but that's what a podcast is. But, I am making my one-on-one coaching program a 6-month program now, and adding in 8 different modules of content. And I'm doing that mostly because I just think that people need a little bit more than 4 months and to see maybe the mental and physical results that they want to see. By the time we get to 4 months, I never want anyone to feel dependent on me. So that's usually when we part ways, because I'm like, you're good. You've learned, what you needed to. You've gotten all those tools. But I think that extra 2 months is just going to give us the time together to really implement those tools and make the long-lasting habits and changes that we've done in just 16 weeks. We're going to just, keep practicing them, keep focusing on them for another 2 months. And that also means that I've got a lot of work to do on my end, on the website side of things, changing modules, recording new podcast episodes for those clients. And I have been procrastinating a little bit this month, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've got about a week and a half to get all of that done. And so that's a lot of what my days are looking like, and I just like to go 100 miles per hour. Like I had said, that's kind of why this week probably feels the most stressful for me, because if I can go 100 miles per hour, I will. If I can jam 600 things into a day, I will. And that's kind of my toxic trait. I feel like I'm constantly working on different aspects of my health, and that is just one I have a really hard time parting with. There's a part of me that just loves to feel productive, and if I don't do a million things in a day, I don't feel productive. And if it was anybody else, I would tell them that was, not true, and that they didn't need to run themselves weary just to get things done so they could feel productive. But for me, again, I just have a really hard time kind of separating with that part of me. So we're still, kind of working through that. But at the same time, I love to be busy and not busy. Oh my gosh. I love to have a lot of things on my plate, and I like to have a lot of responsibility. But at the same time, I also have to focus on the relationships around me and taking care of things outside of myself, which I notice usually goes to the side. If I'm busy doing work things, I neglect everything that's not myself, and that in return is very selfish. So just finding that balance there. But nonetheless, it's going to be a great week. We're going to get through it. I hope you're able to make some cookies and watch Christmas movies. I know for me, I really want to make some sugar cookies, like cut out sugar cookies. It's been probably like 5 years since I've done that. And then frost them, and then have maybe Home Alone in the background. That's my husband's favorite Christmas movie, and I honestly don't know how many times I've really ever watched it. I'd probably prefer the second one over the first one, but nonetheless, we'll have some sort of Christmas movie on and just get kind of cozy. We don't have a kitchen at our house, so might have to go to my parents to do that. But also, I know last year we did gingerbread making contests. So it was my brother and his girlfriend, Nate and I, and then my parents. And that was so much fun. So hopefully we're able to find time to do that again this year too. But like I had said, kind of getting back into that catch up, we don't have a kitchen right now. That will probably be my update for the next 6 weeks. The people at our house have been very on top of things. Don't get me wrong, but we have not had a kitchen now for, I think, going on 2 weeks. We tore everything out of our kitchen, 2 Saturdays ago, I believe. And then now we have some updates. I mean, there's some updates here. We have our pantry built in. Everything is framed, meaning they have all the wood structure. We just need now drywall to come in and drywall everything. And that is just a process of waiting for people. We were kind of waiting on the plumber in order to have the drywallers come, and now the plumber was here yesterday. So hopefully they're able to, come out this way before the end of the week. If not, obviously it'll probably be sometime late next week, which is fine too. I'm kind of at the point where I've gotten comfortable in my makeshift kitchen, other than me still making sourdough, and really that's about it though. Just making sourdough. I do have to go and bake it at my parents' house, so then I can sell that to the people that buy bread from me. But otherwise, it's not been too bad. We have this little stovetop contraption. I don't know what you'd call it, like a single burner stovetop. And I purchased it, and it was honestly probably the best purchase of the year. If you are ever going through a kitchen remodel, best $38 you could ever spend is all I'm saying. I got it at Baumgart's, and this might be, I don't know if this is a Nebraska thing, but Baumgart's is Orscheln's, I believe, the new version of it. I don't know all of the history, but anyway, they are seriously the one-stop shop. I was telling my mom that, which it just sounds so funny because it's like a farm store, but they have Carhartt, like super cool Carhartt stuff. If you're my brother, pause the podcast now or skip forward, but I got him this super cool Carhartt jacket. It's like a charcoal gray. I don't know. It looks like something you would get from Urban Outfitters for a lot more than what I paid for it. So I love that. I also got that stovetop burner. We got a dehumidifier. What else did I purchase there? I feel like I did something. Oh, they have these super cool shoes. So if you're my dad, also skip forward like 15 seconds. But I got him these super cool Ariat, like waterproof shoes. Something that you can like slip on. When we were at their house this last week, he was like, I need some waterproof like slip-on shoes because I wear my like UGG slippers all the time. And so I was like, okay, awesome. So I'm going to go to Baumgart's and see if they have anything. And of course they did. So if for all the men in your life, if you've got one near you, all I'm saying is you should check it out. Yes, it's a farm store. Yes, I was probably one of the few women in that store, but I honestly love going there. Part of it is probably nostalgia though, because when I was growing up, my grandparents watched me every single day of the week, and my grandpa loved Orscheln's. And we would always get like candy at the checkout. They have so much just candy, like those little oranges or peachos. And I just remember as a kid going there and getting to pick out some candy or some sort of toy. Anyway, probably just nostalgia for me, but I truly love going there. Very much of a tangent, but getting back into our kitchen, we also had cabinets delivered this last week. Last Wednesday, and what else has happened? We had electricians come. We live again in an older home, and so there was no overhead lighting in any of the bedrooms except for the front office, which is my husband's office. And so now we finally have overhead lighting, and I hate overhead lighting, but at the same time, I'm starting to appreciate not having to like use my phone flashlight to look for things in my office when it gets dark outside so early. So it's been pretty nice, I will admit. We also picked out countertops. We went to just a Home Depot this last weekend. We did not pull the plug on them yet, but I found the countertops that I want. We can actually go to Omaha and pick out the slab that we want. It's like a very kind of creamy quartz, I believe, but it has like strings, I guess is what you would say, of like a darker kind of orangey, not orange, I don't know how to explain it, but anyway, that'll be the countertops, adding something a little bit warm because our cabinets are like a very creamy white, a warm white, and then we're actually going to use that, what do you call it, beadboard, if you know what I'm talking about. If you look at any Pinterest board and they don't have a tile backsplash, it's probably what you're seeing. It's like the wood board, but it has like very skinny like lines that are kind of engraved in it. That's what we're going to use as our backsplash and probably paint it the white very similar to our cabinets. I just want it to look very open and airy. I'm not sure what we want to paint the kitchen because I think it could be a lot of white if everything is just, that light color. And especially as you think about having kids in the future, that could be a terrible decision on my part. But really, we like to keep things pretty clean, and so we're just going to go pretty simple. But I ordered this faucet. It's like a brass faucet, and I'm so excited for that to come in the mail. It's coming through Etsy. It was an investment piece, but also we know we're not doing this again. It's kind of a one-time deal, especially when you get all of the invoices coming for things that you have to pay for, and you're like, okay, yep, we're doing this one time. And the next time we do this, there won't be a next time we do this. Hopefully, over the years, as time changes, we can just make minor adjustments if it's super outdated. But I really just want to do everything pretty timeless. I think, if you do kind of that authentic, like cottagey country home style that you see all over Pinterest, if you stick with that, I feel like it's pretty timeless, because when I look back at photos of probably what this house would have looked like before they remodeled the kitchen in about like 1966, I believe, that is probably what more so of what the kitchen would have looked like, is what I'm trying to kind of convert it back to. So all that to say, I have felt very positive this last week. Although, yes, I know I started saying I was a little bit stressed for this week. At the same time, last week I think was a lot harder for me because we had people in and out of our house. And I just get very stressed out when that happens. I felt like I had the stomach flu for a few days, and that's exactly what I felt when I lived in Omaha. There was a period of time where I didn't really have a job I loved. I didn't know if I wanted to go back to school. It was just like a very difficult time for me post-college. And so I did feel like I had the stomach flu for months. And I know that was my body's way of saying, you need to slow down. You need to find a way to control and manage your emotions. And I started noticing that was coming back. And I feel like really I am somebody where like external things really affect me probably more so than internal. So like when if I look back that would have been about 3 years ago, it was not having a job I liked, people that were at the job that just frustrated me, not knowing if I wanted to go to school, getting accepted into school, like OT school, but then not wanting to go and having to respond back to emails and job interviews. And it was awful. And all of those external things really weighed on me, where I feel like this is kind of the same, where it's like, everybody's in your space. You don't know when people are coming into your home. They could be here at 7 a.m. They could be here at 10 a.m. I don't know. I just need to make sure that my house isn't a complete disaster, or that I'm not in the middle of doing something like recording a podcast, for example. When people are going to be in my house, banging around, doing their thing, which all good things. I want them to be here. That's the thing. I'm not complaining because I want them to be here. But I just knew that I needed to find a way to regulate my system. And I feel like just how I do that, honestly, is through baking and cooking. And it's not so much of then I emotionally eat, because I would rather make something and then give it away. But I was able to on Saturday. Nate and I went to Grand Island, again, picked out countertops, and then just kind of did some Christmas shopping, and then I went to my parents and I baked. And I just feel like that is kind of my time to unwind. I love to make food that other people enjoy. That's just really satisfying for me. And so I think that's kind of what I've realized is my outlet, which is really fortunate then that I get to also share recipes and information with other people, because it just is something that I'm truly passionate about, and I've noticed it helps me. And so I just want other people to then feel that inspiration in the kitchen as well, and view it as a stress release, rather than getting super anxious or upset or worried that something's not going to turn out the way that it's planned. Because I definitely have food fails too. But I would say most often than not, I've gotten comfortable enough that usually it ends up being a successful recipe that I make. But that's kind of what we're talking about today. I'm going to skip over today's segment of how I'm nourishing my mind, body, and spirit, because I really feel like I just unloaded a lot of what you could probably tell I'm doing to nourish those parts of me. And at the same time, we're already at 18 minutes. So let me just jump in to the bulk of today's episode. I guess before I do that, I do want to let you know that I'm drawing for that wellness bundle giveaway at the end of the year. And so if you want to get entered into that, what you need to do is leave a rating and or a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Send a screenshot of that to me so I know. And then for additional entries, you can post about the podcast on your story. Post that you're listening, and then keep an eye out, because I'm also going to have a post on my Instagram here coming up of everything that's included in that giveaway. And you'll have a chance to get additional entries by tagging, liking, all of the things of that post. So it's all the tools that really have helped me on my health journey. And I know last week it was about de-influencing and how there's all those things you don't need. But I think if you can get all those things for free from someone, you might as well, try to get that, because no, you don't need all of these things, but they are super useful to have. And I really love everything that's included in that. So I'll have a visual of what you can expect here coming soon on Instagram and Facebook, so then you can actually see what you're kind of signing up for. But thank you again if you've left a rating or review. I really, really appreciate it. Just make sure it's 5 stars. Otherwise, unfortunately, you'll not get entered into the giveaway. That also happened this last week. Somebody gave me less than 5 stars, which, I cannot take things too personally, but part of me wants to go like, oh my gosh, what do they not like about me? What did I say? Did I offend someone? And then the other part of me was like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Totally fine. If you don't like the podcast, then don't listen to the podcast. You don't have to leave a rating that's less than 5 stars, but sometimes whatever. That's besides the point. I love you. No hard feelings, but anyway, again, it does have to be 5 stars in order for you to get entered into the giveaway. That just helps promote the podcast, and it gets me ranked higher in certain categories, which again, just helps the podcast. Obviously I do all of this for free and I love that. So I just hope that I can do this more long-term and just keep it up, right? Make sure that it's worth my time, which it absolutely is. Let's get into the bulk of really talking about meal prepping and planning. And I want to talk about this today because it's something I am always trying to get better at. We definitely have weeks at my house where we're really good at planning out what our meals are going to be for that week, and it is so helpful. Whereas we have other weeks where I just go to the grocery store, grab what I know I can make into a meal, and then we eat whatever sounds good that day. We definitely go both ways. This is not me saying I'm perfect all the time, but I do know that it helps to meal plan. But there's also the piece of meal prep that I view a lot differently than most people probably do. So we're going to talk about that too. I do have a anti-inflammatory eating meal prep for busy people guide, and I'm going to link that in the description of today's episode if you want to check it out. It's $10. It's on my website. It's a digital guide, but I'm talking through that guide with you today. So if you want like the visual examples of what I'm talking about, that is the guide you'll want to snag to get that. But when it comes back to meal planning, what I like to do is cook once and eat twice. So what that means is every day, for example, if I was to make a list of my meals, I do Monday, I do a B, L, and D, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I know for breakfast, I'm probably going to have eggs, which we have chickens, so that's always a surplus of ours. But I know with my eggs, I'm going to probably want some spinach, or I'm going to want some Fage lactose-free Greek yogurt. I need some berries and granola and peanut butter to top that. I just have a few staples that I know I can make at home for, it takes about 5 to 10 minutes, and that's consistently probably what I'll have for breakfast. If you are somebody who is rushing out the door, or you don't have time in the morning, or you don't allow yourself time in the morning to have a really good balanced breakfast, I'm going to talk about that meal prep side of things when it comes to that. But otherwise, it's really just having all of those ingredients you need for breakfast each morning of the week to have something that has that core 4, right? A starchy carb, a lean protein, a healthy fat, and fiber in the form of a fruit or vegetable. So with that, then I know my breakfasts are pretty much the same. I'm a creature of habit with that. Then I come to lunch, and for lunch, I know that it's typically going to be the leftovers of supper the night before. So that's really what I try to do is for supper, that is my make a meal once, eat twice method. So because both Nate and I work from home, I'm really starting now to quadruple our supper because I know if we're both going to have leftovers for lunch, we need more than just one serving. And so then for lunch is usually those leftovers. And then for supper, that is when I make that meal and I make enough to have it again a second time. When it comes to lunch though, I know a lot of people are not leftover people, and that I totally understand. What I'm going to tell you to do then is if you have a glass, I don't know if freezing glass is probably the best method. Honestly, plastic is probably, just make sure it's BPA free, doesn't have any, whatever they can sneak into your plastic. I'm not pro about low tox plastic products because I just prefer to use glass. But when it comes to freezing a meal, then before you even eat supper that night, go ahead and make a meal prepped meal. So you're going to have, let's say for example, you have, tacos. So for like fajitas, for example, we had that last night. So fajitas, you're going to do like 2 scoops of the fajita mix, maybe fold a tortilla in half, stick it in there, and then freeze that. So you're just going to pop it right in the freezer, and that way you know, okay, even if I don't want to eat this for a leftover tomorrow for lunch, eventually you're going to get like a stack up of leftover recipes or leftover meals that you can then grab and go. So it becomes more of like a freezer meal rather than like leftovers that are sitting in your fridge. That is how I prefer to do things if I was to have leftovers, like if I didn't like to have them for lunch the next day. If you freeze it, it really feels like a fresh meal, when you're about to go have it, because it's not like you touched it. It's not like, it's like right before you even ate supper, you put it in a freezer box, you put it in the freezer, and then boom, you like let it stack up if you don't want that for the next meal. Maybe if you keep doing that consistently, you kind of get a buildup of meals that you can grab and go for lunch the next day. So then that is really what I do week to week. And my family, I would say we typically are pretty consistent with our meals. Just off the top of my head, meals that we often do is fajitas with homemade sourdough tortillas. We usually do some sort of Thai bowl with rice noodles and cilantro, ribboned carrots, beef. Love that meal. Then we'll do like a pesto or cashew pasta. Sourdough pizza is another one we do pretty often, or like a sourdough slice pizza. That is one that's super easy. If I don't have time to make that sourdough crust, I will just take like a slice of sourdough. I'll put my marinara on top of it, and then vegetables and cheese and some sort of protein. You stick it in the air fryer for like 4 minutes, and then you have like a pizza bagel, probably is what most people would call it, but it's on a slice of sourdough. Things like that take like 20 minutes or less, but those are meals then we won't have like leftovers for the next day, but I could make that again for lunch, knowing that I already have browned hamburger. I already have some sliced veggies probably left over that I could then put on the pizza and make within 10 minutes for lunch if I needed to. So that's really the meals that we gravitate towards. I know meal planning can be a hassle. That's why I would recommend you would start with just doing for 5 days of the week. So just do Monday through Friday. And then eventually you can add in your weekends. I also think having one day of the week where you do most of your grocery shopping is super helpful. That way, and I usually recommend like in the middle of the week, which I know most people are a Sunday grocery shopping family or person. I just feel like if you do it on Wednesday, you're then entering the weekend still having fresh food. Whereas if you do it on Sunday, by the time you get to Saturday, if you're someone that like eats out a lot, or you, would gravitate towards something a little less healthy because you knew you didn't have food, then I would say, well, let's put it in the middle of your week. That way you're on your weekends, you can still stay consistently eating at home for most meals and not eating out. And then by the time you get to like that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're finishing up any leftovers you have. And then Wednesday, again, you're going shopping. Just a couple different ways you can do it. Again, if you are somebody that doesn't struggle with that, you get enough, you have plenty of food for the whole week, then that's not so much of a worry. Stick with that Sunday. But I think Wednesday can also be a really helpful day to do that grocery shopping. From there, though, I want to start talking about meal prep, because meal prep to me is not meal prepping 6 meals in a box. I think you see all of those like gym bodybuilding people, and they have all of those food boxes, and they do like a cup of rice, a grilled chicken breast, and some broccoli. And they eat that for every single lunch for like the next 7 days. And I always think like by the time you get to day like 4, isn't that just soggy and disgusting? Like that just grosses me out. Even if I make way too many overnight oats and have like 6 of them in my fridge, there is no way I want to eat that 5 and 6th overnight oat jar, because think about how long that has been like sitting in your fridge. I don't know. To me, that's just really, really gross. So I'm not so much of like a meal planning, like meal prepping person, like planning out the whole meal and then having it in your fridge forever and ever until you finally eat it. I'm much more of a ingredient prepping person than like a whole meal prepping. And so in this meal prep guide that I'm just going to like briefly kind of go through with you, we talk about preparing breakfast. So if you're somebody who works from home or you have extra time in the morning, I really like to make a warm breakfast, some eggs, a yogurt bowl, whatever that is. But you should really always just focus on that core four for breakfast, especially. Every single meal it's important, but making sure that you're getting a carb, a protein, a healthy fat, and fiber in the form of a fruit or vegetable is going to give you the energy you need to have, just a good morning, to not feel like, okay, 10:30 hits and I need food again. It's also going to help with any of the jitters that can come from the caffeine you drink in the morning. Breakfast is just a really, really important meal. But again, for planning breakfast or prepping breakfast, you don't have to prep that whole meal. If you are like a grab and go person, you need something easy, there are recipes in there for chocolate chip muffins or overnight oats, protein pancakes, peanut butter protein balls. Those are recipes that I think are pretty tried and true, ones I've done for years and years. And even though, yes, I work from home, sometimes it's still nice to have some overnight oats prepped just because it makes your whole morning routine a little bit faster. I personally like to get a lot of my work done right away in the morning. That way I just know that I then in the afternoon can probably stop a little bit earlier because I'm much less productive in the afternoon. From there, it goes into meal prepping meals, right? And so with this, like I said, I'm an ingredient person. I'm not, make your whole meal, let it sit in the fridge for 6 days type of person. And so again, you are still focusing on the carb, the lean protein, the healthy fat, and the fiber in the form of a fruit or vegetable. So I have a list of carbohydrates that you can add to any meal and how you can meal prep those specific ingredients. So, there's the anti-inflammatory list of all types of starchy carbs: sourdough, oats, chickpea pasta, red lentil pasta, tortillas, quinoa, sweet potatoes, right? There's so many lists there. There's also herbs and spices. But how you can really prep carbohydrates, okay? So cooking your grains. So I've noticed that if you just have like a rice or a quinoa or a pasta already cooked and sitting in your fridge or your freezer, that lasts up to 4 days roughly. I know then, okay, I can utilize that for any meal I'm making this week. So this is something I always think, like on the day you get groceries, that's really when you should be utilizing all of these like prepping methods. Okay, so cooking your grains, again, it's like those rice, pastas, quinoa. That way you can have those for up to 4 days in your fridge. Washing your produce is another huge one. I really like to do 1 cup of white vinegar and then 4 cups of cold water and washing all my fruits and vegetables in there, really letting them soak for, about 5 minutes, and then I rinse them and then I store them away. I also always store like my blueberries with a paper towel in there to absorb any of the water. That's a big piece if you're prepping berries, is that you don't want them to get soggy, so you need something to absorb the moisture. And especially if they've been washed, you for sure want that. So adding in a paper towel, that is just something that I've really gotten into the habit of. I still do that with grapes too. I just don't like my fruits and vegetables to get all slimy. And I would say that I'm definitely more of like a fruit prepping person than vegetables. I love cutting vegetables when it comes to a meal. I like them to be freshly chopped up. So I don't really prep veggies, but I will definitely prep my fruit. So just making sure, like if I'm going to make that yogurt bowl or overnight oats in the morning, that then I can take berries straight out of the fridge, put, about a half a cup on whatever it is I'm eating, and then I don't have to wash those yet. So again, it's just taking time out of all of this, saving you some time. I know we are all busy people. We've got lots of things going on. Sometimes the mornings are super chaotic. So how can we make it all just a little bit easier, a little less time consuming? Another way you can prep carbohydrates is to chop them up and then store them away. So this is mostly what I did with my garden produce this year. Is towards the end of the year, as the produce is dwindling, and I knew that I wanted it to last long term, but I didn't have the time and I didn't really know how to can things properly yet, I would just chop up like all my peppers, my onions, and then I would put them in a bag, and then I would store them in my freezer. So you can still do that with fresh, right? I think fresh is always, better than frozen, but if it's going to save you time, then especially like with those peppers and onions, dicing them up and then putting them in the freezer. That way, like if you're going to ground a pound of hamburger, you can add in those peppers and onions and just add them right to that meat as it's cooking on the stovetop. It's adding in that fiber in the form of a fruit or vegetable, making sure that your meal is core 4 focused. And again, it's just saving you time. There's also different examples in there of how you can store your fresh herbs or how you can really keep the produce you're buying fresh for the longest amount of time. Because I feel like a big thing that I hear is that it's super expensive to buy fresh fruits and vegetables, and it is, so let's utilize storing them away and keeping them fresh for as long as possible, while also making the meals you're making a lot more easy because you have everything ready to go. The next section is lean proteins. So again, there's all these different examples of proteins that you can consume that are considered anti-inflammatory, and then how you can meal prep proteins. So how you can cook your chicken. I always think if you're going to have a protein source, cook it for the next, 2 to 3 days. Cooking your chicken, the slow cooker is my best friend, and it should become yours this next year because it saves you so much time. You pop something in the slow cooker, you let it sit for 6 hours, and boom, you have a protein for the next 2 to 3 days. Like it really is that simple. So also with like ground turkey or hamburger or hard-boiled eggs, those are ones that I love to have on hand for snacks, is hard-boiled eggs, because cooking an egg, it just takes, again, a little extra time in the morning. So how can you make that a faster process? It's really just seeing, okay, what is taking me the most time in the morning, and how can I make that in a different way or prep that in a different way so that it's something that becomes really easy and convenient. I think that's when we start gravitating toward convenience foods, is when we think, well, we don't have time to prep, we don't have time to make breakfast, I'm just going to grab a Cliff Bar. Well, okay, you're not getting the core 4. If you're having a Cliff Bar, you're getting a lot of sugar that is not really the highest of quality, and you're neglecting a protein, you're neglecting a healthy fat, you're neglecting fiber in the form of a fruit or vegetable, because you sacrifice convenience for kind of like a health or nutrient dense meal. And so, what can you be doing today to make that nutrient dense meal possible, even on a limited time schedule? And then it goes into healthy fats that you can add to any meal. So there's, again, a list of those healthy fats, and then really how you can cook with healthy oils and pair them with each meal. I think this one gets neglected a lot because we think that fats are bad for us, when in reality our brain is 60% fat. So if you think about what your brain needs to be fed to limit on any of that brain fog or fatigue or forgetfulness, it's probably because your diet is lacking fat. So how can you add in fat to, feed your brain, but also give your body that energy that it needs? And so how you can cook with avocado oil, coconut oil, olive oil, and how you can actually swap that out for a different oil. So this is a tool that I use a lot with clients, is if it's butter, which if you're not lactose intolerant, a high quality butter is just fine. But you can swap the butter, canola, vegetable oil, soybean oil for the same amount of a healthier oil. So when I'm making any baked goods, I always use coconut oil or ghee. Ghee is a clarified butter. And so it is kind of like a 1-for-1 swap, and honestly, I end up using a little bit less of like the coconut oil or the ghee, just because I notice it doesn't need that much. And so again, swap for canola oil, use melted coconut oil. It's those little things that you can do to make any meal considered anti-inflammatory, is honestly just all about the quality of ingredients you're using. And then it gets into recipe ideas for meal planning and meal prepping full meals. So there's mason jar salads, all of these ingredients that you can add to them that you can grab and go pour it onto a plate when you're at work and you have a full salad. And then I have an anti-inflammatory recipe guide as well. If you've purchased that, this guide goes really hand in hand with it. Super helpful to have both of these, I think, because it gives you not only the recipes, but what you can do, that prep work you can do before you make the recipe, which I think is honestly probably the most important part, because if you haven't prepped anything and you are feeling overwhelmed or stressed with everything that needs to be done when it comes to making a meal, knowing how you can prep certain ingredients to make actually making the meal a lot easier is going to be a huge piece of the puzzle for you, and making it more of like a long-lasting habit that you start to form. So then probably the best thing in this guide is a visual diagram of what you should eat. So I talk a lot about the core 4 method. I do that because I truly think that if you have one ingredient from each category or more, one or more, you are going to have energy, you're going to feel good, you're going to have less fatigue, you're going to notice your digestion is better because you're getting enough of what your body needs to have healthy, a healthy gut, push things through your system and not feel constipated or not have the opposite problem of diarrhea. It really is just probably that tool that I have found to be the most helpful in decreasing inflammation when it comes to food. And from here, I give you specific examples of like you could add one from each of these categories and make a meal. So I'm just going to give you an example. So for example, the first one section is a starchy carb. So I'm going to go with quinoa. That's going to be my starchy carb for the meal. And then I think about a lean protein. So there's a list of lean proteins there. I'm going to do some pork loin. So I've got my quinoa, my pork loin. I've got my starchy carb, my protein. Now I need to add a fiber and healthy fat. So for my fiber, I need any fresh or frozen fruit or vegetable. So all fruits and vegetables are on the table. Nothing's off the table. So I'm going to do some steamed broccoli. So I've got my quinoa, my pork loin, my steamed broccoli, and then I need to add a healthy fat. So let's see what I'm going to do here. I will probably do a slice of half of an avocado on my quinoa and pork loin, and then I'm going to do like a drizzle of coconut aminos. So you can see quickly I made a meal. Quinoa, pork loin, steamed broccoli. On top of my pork loin and quinoa, I'm doing half of an avocado and a drizzle of coconut aminos. Those kind of taste like a soy sauce without the soy. So that is what I utilize a lot because it makes finding and creating a meal very, very easy. It honestly takes all of the thinking out of it. It's like boom, 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 boom. One from each category, you got a full meal. Then you look at what you should season things with. So there's a huge list, not a huge list. There is a pretty big list of anti-inflammatory herbs and spices. I mostly listed on here the ones you can get from a jar because I've noticed those last the longest. And unless you're freezing your fresh herbs, which I would say that's probably the best form, is if right after you pick them off of like the plant, you go ahead and freeze them. If you can't do that though, there's a whole list here of things that you can just buy like in a jar that are already dried, and they're considered anti-inflammatory, different ideas for you to season your food with. And then the oils that you can bake your food with. So coconut oil, natural butter or like a high quality butter or ghee. And then to cook with, more of like your savory, thinking sweet versus savory, cooking with your avocado oil, olive oil, butter, or ghee. Tallow is another one that I should really add to that list because I also cook with beef tallow and I also use bacon grease to make my eggs, which sounds like it would be not considered healthy, but I think it's a good byproduct from the bacon, is if you kind of clarify that, and then you can use it when you're making eggs. So that is really like my core beliefs around meal prepping and meal planning, is just honestly knowing yourself and knowing what you need to make making a meal easier. So do you need to prep specific ingredients like your grains, or freeze your vegetables and chop them up, or cook your meats when you get back from the grocery store? Or do you need to make sure that you have a grab and go breakfast that aligns with the core 4? Because if you don't, that's when, again, you're going to notice you have no energy when you get to work, or you're sitting in class, or, you're just at home, whatever you do, right? You're going to just not have that energy. And especially if you have that coffee before breakfast, you are going to absolutely hit a slump. And so how can we prevent that slump? Is prepping and planning your meals ahead of time. So, like I had said, I'm going to put this guide in the description of the episode if you're just interested in checking it out. It's on my website for sale. I feel like this podcast gave you a lot of what is on there, but of course there's just some extra things that are super helpful. You get those specific recipes all listed out. Not something you absolutely need by any means. That's why I love the podcast, is because I can give these little tidbits of information at absolutely no cost, and I love doing it. I love utilizing free resources. That's something I talk a lot about, and more so especially too, with thinking about de-influencing and how you can consume less things, right? But maybe consume more content for free. So trying something out for free for as long as you possibly can until you're like, okay, I need to get maybe some one-on-one help. Or an example I used was I would watch free workout videos on YouTube for months before I would finally commit to the platform Form by Sammy Clark. I finally was like, okay, I've been utilizing every single free workout of hers online. Maybe it's time I invest in her program. And so I did. But utilize things like my podcast, take all of this information, soak it in, write it out. And I really think you can get a lot of what you need if you're trying to do this independently through just listening to other people talk. Always finding 1 to 3 people you like, know, and trust, and making sure you don't overconsume information to the point where you just get super stressed out and overwhelmed. But along with that too, I definitely don't like to be the salesy person, but if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I'm offering 2 months of free coaching until December 23rd, and that's coming up here really quick. That's on Saturday, which it came so fast, but I'm doing this because my 4-month program is becoming a 6-month program, and I'm giving you those extra 2 months of coaching for free. And it's just this really cool opportunity that I just felt like I wanted to do. I wanted more people to not necessarily be able to afford, because I think like for my price of coaching, it's something that I really try to make work for most people. But if anybody needs that little push to like, okay, this is the cheapest you're ever going to get coaching from me, and if you want to work with me, like this is really a great opportunity to do that. It's focused a lot around what I talk about on the podcast. It's that mindset piece of your relationship with food and your body, and then we move into healthy boundaries with people, how you can create a balanced plate, the Core 4 method. We go grocery shopping together if we're able to. You get one-on-one support and attention all the time, right? You've got access to me through Voxer, which is what I use to communicate with clients. You can text me. I will respond when kind of in that certain time frame that I do that. But just making sure you always feel supported is a big thing for me. And when you don't feel supported, it's a lot easier to just kind of like get off track or think, screw it, it's January 7 and I wasn't consistent with all of my New Year's resolutions. I might as well just start next year. But no, like having somebody that doesn't let that happen. Like we're not starting next year. We're not even starting over on Monday. We're starting right now. Like you didn't do it for 3 days. Right now, you're going to start doing it. And it's just that little extra push that I think some of us really need. And I know I really, really needed for a long time, which is why I've hired 3 coaches of my own. Okay. I don't do this because I don't think it works. Obviously, I do this because I think having a coach is really, really helpful. So I just wanted to share that with you. If it's something you're interested in doing, just submit an application before the 23rd. And even if you don't want to start working together until after the new year, totally fine. But just submit that application and then we can kind of move forward with what that would look like for you. But I also, as we're wrapping up today's episode, forgot to post the prayer requests on Monday. That's something I am still trying to get into the habit of doing because obviously it's a new segment that I've added and I don't always remember, but we usually close these episodes in prayer if you're new here. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I will try to remember next week to have that prayer request because it's so fun and meaningful to me to be able to pray for you by submitting those prayer requests. So, all right, let's go ahead and close today's episode. So, dear Lord, thank you so much for today. Thank you for the sun shining in this room. And I just hope that we all are able to have just a very joy-filled Christmas. And I ask that those people who maybe find themselves alone for Christmas this year, that they feel comforted by you and that they're able to find some time to focus on themselves and their health. That instead of viewing it as, maybe a dark moment where they're isolated and alone, they view it as a time when they can connect with themselves and connect with you and really remember what the reason for Christmas is, right? It's not about all of those gifts we get, but that because you were born and that you came to earth and you completely transformed the world. And now we get to have such an intimate relationship with you. And I just ask that on everybody, that they're just feeling so close to you this season, but not just right now, but going into the new year and beyond that especially I am able to really stick with a daily practice of connecting with you, through prayer and reading my Bible and having conversations with you. I just, again, pray that everyone stays safe this Christmas, and if they're traveling, I also am kind of praying for snow because I just feel like that is it makes Christmas just feel so magical. So, thank you for whoever is listening to this episode. And again, I just pray that they know how loved they are, and that whatever is on their heart right now or whatever maybe is overwhelming them, that they feel a sense of ease and calm, and that they're able to enter into a new season or a new time of the year with joy and calmness, and that really Christmas time can just feel relaxing this year and not like a rat race and not stressful with any family dynamics, and that really there's just a peace that's felt by everyone. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, so thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you'd like to follow along with my life outside of the podcast, you can find me at Nourish with Bailey on TikTok, Instagram, Lemon8, YouTube, and then I'm also just Bailey Seaton on Facebook if you want to connect on there. But with that, I will talk to you again next Wednesday. Bye.